life is tragic and life is comic. My films are tragic comedies, always. People say to me, where do you get your ideas from? Well, the truth is, I've only got to walk down the street. If I pass 10 people, there are 10 possible films there, really.
This is Mike Leigh. He's directed 15 feature films over 50 years with a really unique style of developing scripts with his actors over months of research and improvisation. We're going to take a look at all of his films.
Let's start with Bleak Moments.
1 vegetable curry.
9. Number 9.
Bleak Moments centres on a bunch of lonely people trying to communicate in various ways. This couple, Sylvia and Peter, the central character and her doomed non-boyfriend, are out on this date. They go to an empty Chinese restaurant, except this is a rather aggressive man sitting by himself in the corner, munching away. And basically, it's just the worst date. It just is. And it's very, very sad. But boy, if you don't laugh at it, you ain't got no sense of humour, really. I mean, that's what it's about.
54.
Yes.
2.
No. For 1. 1 sweet and sour pork. With fried rice.
I hope that people find it as funny as it's supposed to be and as sad as it's supposed to be. It is probably, in that sense, if you like, the prototype Mike Leigh film. No film I've ever made was ever interfered with by anybody by way of backers or producers or anybody else. If you can imagine executives saying, well, actually, maybe this is too slow, or those pauses are too long, or maybe there'll be something else should happen that lightens or whatever it is. You'd blow the whole thing out of existence before you started, really. Because I make a film that start with no script comes out of the work, we go to a backer and we say, there's no script, we can't discuss casting, we don't know what it's going to be about, we'll find that out by making it. And please don't interfere with it at any stage while we're making it. Now, only one of two things happens when we do that. Either they say, fantastic, there's the money, go and make a film. Or they tell us to fuck off. And basically, the latter is what happens mostly. So I think it's important that such idiosyncratic and, if you like, to put it like this, extreme elements and situations and ways of looking at things happen in my films. It's because we've had the freedom to explore the situation in a real way and then distill them down without worrying about conventions and norms of what you can or couldn't shoot.
It's not, it's not so easy to know what it is you really do want to do. What do you do like?
I'm the president of Venezuela.
As to where I was in my personal life, I was in my late 20s. I'd gone through some relationship experiences. I was not far away from meeting somebody that I then married and was with for a very long time and had children with. But I was very much at that stage where you're not quite sure who you're really going to be able to communicate with and share it with, or whether you're going to go through one of those bleak moments, So, in that sense, it was personal. Meantime, really came out of, there was quite a dire unemployment situation in the UK under Thatcher. It dealt with the pain and the waste of young people who are unemployed. Thatcher's government had introduced some rather bogus schemes that were supposed to give the impression that they were giving people solutions to their unemployment problems. But in fact, they were like schemes, and you went on them for like 3 weeks, and then that was it, and it didn't change anything. In the meantime, where you have an unemployed family, working class family in the East End of London, there's an upwardly mobile aunt, the sister of the mother, who, from the best of intentions and generous of spirits, invites one of the boys, a rather unintelligent one, played by Tim Roth, to go and help her decorate the house.
These are the terms of your employment. You do a 7-hour day, that's 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. with a 1-hour lunch break, right? Wages, I'll give you £1.20 an hour plus £4 per day to cover your return fares, right?
And that was a sort of reference to these bogus Thatcher schemes. And there are other characters, including a incredible nutcase, aggressive skinhead played by Gary Oldman. Bleak Moments had been made with a very, very, very tiny budget, with a very small crew, but they were television film people. And you'd get a cinematographer, a cameraman, and they were all men, who would be very good, but they'd show up having shot a farming documentary or a news item or something the previous week to say, OK, what's the first shot? So it was wasn't cinematically adventurous. When it came to Meantime, the producer and I wanted it to be a feature film. We said, can we do it on 35mm as a movie? And the answer was, well, we're not there yet. Maybe next year or the year after we'll start to do that. But at the moment, it's a television film. So it was shot on 16mm. But we had a completely feature film crew. For the first time, we talked, long before we started shooting, when I was developing the thing with the actors, we started talking about the look of the film, tests were shot. The crew were feature film people, so it was shot at a higher level, and you can see in it a much greater qualities, cinematic qualities.
Oi, Pratt. Got a fag?
It's worth stating something very important about all of my films. I work with character actors, and that's a very specific thing. That is to say, actors who are not only good at characters, but actors that don't play themselves, that play real people out there in the street, who want to play real people out there in the street, and are good at it. Not all actors are character actors. The first thing that happens is the actor makes lists of real people that they know. I don't necessarily give a specification. They talk to all sorts of people. The only specification is always of the same sex as you. They just talk about lots of people, and I choose people out of these long lists, and we distill them down to a tiny number, and usually about 3. And out of that, we build the starting point for the character. I say to an actor, please be in this film. There's no script. I can't tell you what it's about because we're going to discover that by the process of making it. I can't tell you about a character because there is no character. You and I will collaborate to make one. And at no time will you know anything about the whole thing except what your character knows. And this is very important because it means that through the improvisations and everything, they can respond completely in a real and organic way. They don't have an overview of the whole project, and they certainly don't know about other characters.
How much you getting paid?
Told you, £1.20 an hour.
I've heard it's 60p an hour.
Well, you heard wrong.
None of your business.
But that's right, isn't it, Mavis?
You're giving me half.
No, I ain't.
You are.
I hope. I suppose you could say it was a film about what you believe in. Without question, it was a political film. Here's a young couple. He is got absolutely unquestionable and unashamed left-wing leanings. She is a free-spirited liberal. They work, they live in a tiny apartment, etc. They grow plants, they smoke a bit of weed, and they were cool and very nice people.
What's that?
It's a cactus, isn't it?
Oh,
Guess what his name is?
dunno.
Thatcher.
Because it's a pain in the arse. Prongs you every time you walk past it.
That bit's Dennis.
Is it?
That's Bollock. Dick, Turd, Brains. That's Willie, that's Knob. They've all got names.
Their mother is old and is heading towards her end, and there's a question of caring for her. And the mother lives in an area that was being gentrified by wealthy upper middle class people. There are now districts in London that you would not recognise from how they were several decades ago, where there were working class slum areas. Those Victorian houses are now smart and they're very wealthy areas. Next door to the old lady, a couple has moved in, posh people.
You'll never guess who Aunt Amanda brought along.
Who?
Araminta de Winter.
Really?
Yeah.
And they really want to get rid of the old lady who's living in council accommodation, public housing. They're extremely unsympathetic. And the film is an exploration of confrontations between these various factions.
Do you have all your original features? Cornices, fireplaces?
Got fireplaces, yeah.
Eh, voila. Bring in the estate agents.
Not my house.
Ah, it belongs to a member of your family.
Belongs to the council.
Oh. Well, mercifully, you people do have the opportunity to purchase your council property nowadays. I'd snap it up if I were you. And then, of course, one resells.
I put that famous quartet from Cosi fan tutte playing on the radio. I just thought that would be very nice kind of detail. When she asks her that question that you refer to, do you have your original features? Yeah, they want that house, they hope it's preserved, the house next door, so that like-minded, smart people like them can take it over and refurbish it and etc. It's a film about class, it's a film about mobility, but above all, it's a film about caring. It's about caring and sympathy. Often what I've done, because I like to do it, is start the film on a character that you think is going to be the central character. So here's a film that starts with this guy, a long shot down the road in central London, with a suitcase. And it stays on him, and then you see him moving around, and finally he stops a guy, an incidental character who's repairing a motorbike. Of course, it turns out that the guy with the motorbike is the central character. The guy who's looking for his sister and is lost in central London. They care for him, and they think what he needs most is just to go back home.
See wine.
One of the things that they argue about is whether to have kids. She desperately wants to have a kid. He is concerned about bringing more kids into a tough world. The character Wayne gives us the opportunity to see their natural function as potential parents.
Put your arms in. That's it. That's it. 1, 2. There.
Can I have my stereo, please?
God, that's a bit smart, isn't it?
It's a ghetto blaster.
Thanks.
I do, in a private way, divide all of my films, all my work actually, including the plays, into 2 lots. Something did shift when I became a parent. It's not very obvious in a way that I can illustrate, but I know it was there in the dynamics and the dramatic premises and the preoccupations and stuff. And that informs your life, does it not? You know. But I wouldn't want to go too far with that, because obviously the subjects are what they are. But certainly by the time you get to High Hopes, I was very much into being a daddy. Life is Sweet. Well, here's Life is Sweet. We'd made High Hopes, so we'd established the principle that a feature film was possible. At this point, Simon Channing-Williams and I formed our own company, which we called Thin Man Films, because both of us were a little bit corpulent at that time. I thought it would be good fun to make a film about food. To start with, there's a character played by Jim Broadbent, who, he buys this old caravan that he wants to make into a portable tea bar, and you think this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He couldn't even boil an egg. You discover that he's not only is he a consummate chef, he's the head of a kitchen, a commercial kitchen. And then they've got this friend, if you like to call it that, has been a chef in the past with Andy, the central character, a guy called Aubrey, played by Timothy Spall, who's been in a lot of my films. And this guy starts a restaurant called Le Regret Rien, reference to Edith Piaf. And the guy is completely out of his depth. I mean, it's a fuck-up from A to Z. He doesn't know what he's doing, basically.
Chilled brains, they speak for themselves.
Oh, not brains.
Prune quiche, that's one for our vegetarian friends.
Right.
Black pudding and camembert soup.
Oh, no, don't.
Boiled bacon consommé.
And our consomme, that's the same as soup, isn't it?
It's basically the bacon water.
Yeah. That's like what your mum gives you when you're ill.
When we were developing the character and the idea of the restaurant, Tim Spall and I sat down one day and we made a list of the most ridiculous recipes you could think of. I mean, the most outrageous, pretentious recipes. And I said, OK, we'll use this in the action. Because I'll say something about the style of the whole thing in a moment. But we'll do this. But I'm going to get a professional cook to test all these recipes, which I did. And she tested them. And I said, any ones that are completely implausible or impossible, tell me. And we cut out all the implausible. So everything, although there are preposterous ones, they're all feasible.
And then we have duck in chocolate sauce.
Yeah.
Tongues in a rhubarb hollandaise.
No.
Liver in lager. And clams in ham. That's with a pan-fried cockle-based sauce.
Yeah.
Or quails on a bed of spinach with treacle. Or my PA de resistance, grilled chotters with eggs over easily.
But then, on top of everything else, the anorexic daughter, Nicola, has got a secret boyfriend who comes round. And this is something that came out of the research into anorexia. He comes round and she has him lick chocolate off her bare tits as a turn on for her. And it is something that really is, as I say, from what we discovered. Incidentally to everything else, that character was played by David Thewlis.
You never said you was coming to die.
I'm sorry. I'll go, shall I?
No.
What's all this?
What's he look like?
Fucking dump. Like the rest of your house.
Middle-class wanker.
Finally, I decided that would be a dramatic red herring, and you shouldn't see him again. So he was only in 2 scenes. Because that's what happens with these films. I mean, actors take on the possibility, they don't know what the part's going to be, they don't know how much they're going to be in the film either. After we finished that film, I had a drink with him one day, and I said, well, will you do it again? And he said, well, yeah, I'd love to, but he said, how do I know the same thing won't happen again, you know? So I said, I'll tell you what, be in the next film, and I promise you'll get a good slice of the pie. And so he played Johnny, the central character, in Naked, and you never see, and he's hardly ever off screen. Naked. I thought, well, okay, let's do a film that isn't going to be just domestic in its environment. I thought, what happens if we explore a guy who is a victim of the education system, a guy who would certainly have been, rather than encouraged to be imaginative and verbal, would have been punished and sent out of the room or caned or whatever would happen to him, but who in fact should obviously have gone to university and is a bright guy with a voracious appetite for reading and ideas and facts.
I could have been a doctor.
Do you want to examine me?
You don't believe me, do you?
I believe everything you say.
I've got A-level psychology.
You haven't.
Resolve is never stronger than in the morning after the night. It was never weaker. What do you think of that?
It's a load of bollocks.
I thought of that.
But I also will often cast an actor and have got no idea what we're going to do or where he or where the character will fit in. It's simply enough to know that this is a really good character actor and the sky's the limit and we're going to explore and arrive at something. This is a film about a guy that runs into isolated people on a picaresque kind of journey. And so that was a different departure. We made the film in 1992. I was starting to think the millennium is on the horizon, but nobody's talking about it. So one of the things that was lurking about a bit in my the back of my mind was the mood of the film, the stuff to do with the millennium, the end of the world, the total eclipse. I don't know if this sounds pretentious, but the different kind of poetry of the film.
Do you believe in hell?
Aye.
So do you believe in the devil?
Aye.
What do you think he looks like?
Looks like that, doesn't he?
What, a little nudist homunculus with a pink quiff?
He looks like a snake.
I referred earlier to the way in which, during the course of the preparation of the film, I have to, at a certain point, to share principally with the cinematographer, but also the designers, what I think is emerging. With Naked, I said to Dick Pope, I see it as dark, nocturnal, maybe monochromatic. It's about this guy on a solo journey. Those are the things I said. And he, in collaboration with, particularly with the designer Alison Chitty, who's a great opera designer, set out to shoot tests. and made decisions that were quite, the bleach bypass thing where you don't do everything in the laboratory this is, of course, back in the days of celluloid film. Those decisions were really, really interesting and gave us, so the film has a look and a spirit which is quite different from any other films that we would make.
You just gotta bang your fucking head against them. Just crack the old plate. You got it.
I am very, very strict, and we are very disciplined about going into character, being completely in character and when you're in character, but then absolutely definitely coming out of character when the instruction comes to come out of character. And that's both in the preparation period and in the rehearsals and in the shooting period. So that the actor is, A, doesn't become, as it were, psychologically contaminated by the character or the character's experience, and B, the actor is able to be objective about what happened in the improvisation, if you like, so that we can then deal with it and wield it turn it into dramatic, constructed material.
Go! Go where? Have you got any suggestions? Because it's like a fucking Eskimo's grave out there. Hey! All right, I'm going! Hey!
The people who understand Johnny don't simply find him relentlessly horrible, basically. But if you don't understand him, it's easier to see how you would find him precisely that. What I'm not concerned with in any characters, in one way or the other, is to make sure that we put on the screen nice people because we want the audience to have a nice time. I don't want the audience to have a nice time. I want the audience to have a rich time. I want the audience to be stimulated and to connect with their sense of the real world and what matters to them and what they care about and all the rest of it. The Johnnies of this world are to be experienced and dealt with, and you can deal with him however you want, basically. But we're not in the business of romantic, nice characters.
I'm too old for all this.
Why don't we go out? Go out for a drink or something?
Why don't you fucking go for a drink or something?
Because I want to go with you.
When it came out, initially in the UK, it was attacked from some extreme feminist quarters as being a misogynist film. It is not a misogynist film, nor is Johnny a misogynist. He's a frustrated idealist. Of course, some of his male behaviour is less than attractive, but that doesn't make him a misogynist. And what's very important is precisely because he should not be misread as a misogynist, I have deliberately put in the film an unquestionable misogynist in the guise of the landlord, of Jeremy, as he sometimes calls himself.
Was your tattoo painful?
Yeah.
Good.
That guy is an absolute monster of a misogynist. And I think that's important that that's there to put down a marker as to what is and isn't a misogynist, really. Andrew Dixon did the scores for a number of the films. He's an extraordinarily original composer who lives in the middle of nowhere in Dorset in England. He said, well, we need a harp for this, and we got a famous harpist called Skylar Kanga. We went to her house. She had two houses. She lived in one and the other one was full of harps. And we spent a day choosing the right harp, all that. I think that's important. For me, the music is a very essential part of what my films are. It's not a sort of added extraneous confection of some kind, nor is it standard movie, bog standard movie music. For anyone that's interested in the technicalities, when we're editing my films, we never, ever work with a temporary music track. It's the most absurd conventions of all, to have music that's any old music, just so that you can show executives where the music will be, but it's just nonsense. We don't do that. Anyway, for me it's important that composers react to a cut of the film and then start to feel their emotional response to it. Secrets and Lies. Secrets and Lies, in the first place, arose from the fact that there are two sets of people in my family who adopted kids, and I decided to explore and investigate that. As soon as I started to think about it seriously, I realised that I didn't want to make a film about people who adopt, but more important, to make the film about the baby who is adopted and the birth mother who gave the baby away and the possible connection or not between the two. And that was really the starting point. Also, when I researched it, I discovered that in the 1960s, a lot of working class white girls gave away mixed-race babies, which brings us to Marianne Jean-Baptiste. She plays Hortense, the young woman optometrist who traces her birth mother.
As I know you're very well aware, the law has changed since then, and you are now legally entitled to seek your birth mother out. But the snag is, she may not want to see you.
And we built the whole world for her character, and the fact she was adopted and she didn't really know anything about her actual birth mother, etc., etc., etc. And we also built Cynthia's, the mother's life, with Brenda Blethyn, and indeed her brother, again played by Timothy Spall. Brenda Blethyn and I were dealing with the point in the history of Cynthia's life when she was a teenager, about 16. Very vulnerable, not very bright, very, very susceptible to guys and getting herself into bad and dangerous situations. And we were just talking into existence various experiences, and we said, well, she's at a party. She was 16. She was a little bit drunk. So I said, maybe it's a black guy. And she said, yeah, that's possible. And we talked it through, and we decided that what happened is she went into the bathroom, locked the door, and had a fuck, which she then, the character, forgot about, but Brenda Blethyn forgot about it as well. She knew about it, but she absolutely sublimated it.
Look at you. I'm a bit of a disappointment to you, ain't I?
No.
You don't have to say that, darling.
I know.
When you've got actors that are as grounded in the characters and situations as they are, you can do anything. They were, and we did. We started by improvising it, which we always do, and then we scripted it through rehearsal. Okay, stop. Let's go back, let's fix that. Why don't you say that instead of this? Why don't you swap that round? And so on and so forth. And we did that, and we thus fixed the scene and made it very disciplined and precise. It's an 8.5 minute take. The truth is about that scene that we actually shot reverse close-ups. When we got to the cutting room, one of the takes was so absolutely impeccable. In no time, it took us no time to say, we absolutely don't need to cut into this at all, really. It's there. And that's the story of that shot.
What your mum and dad told you, did they?
Yeah, they did.
They sound like nice people.
Yeah. My mum told me on the plane on our way back from Barbados.
Little girl. Was you upset?
I just looked out at the clouds.
For a number of years following its release round the world, because it was in fact, incidentally, my commercially most successful film, I would receive letters from all over the place. People saying either, I've seen your film, I was adopted, I am now going to trace my birth mother, or I have traced my birth mother, and etc. Or from women saying, I've seen your film and I gave my child away. Either he or she did get in touch, or I'm hoping that they will, or whatever. It was especially popular in countries, including the United States, where here it was, and I think it still is the case, that it's illegal to trace your birth mother in most of the United States. And in the Catholic countries, it's also the case. So that was all part and parcel. It was a very gratifying thing. Career girls, we did what we always do, which is to explore the characters and their relationship in depth, in improvisations, in real time, i.e. 30 minutes is 30 minutes, an hour is an hour, etc. And my job is to just sit and watch these things and think about the possibilities and things. The girls were all around 30, but in order to explore their backstory, we set a whole lot of improvisations for quite a long time, for weeks, about when they were students. And it was really interesting. And I sat there one day and I thought, of course the assumption is that this is only the backstory. We'll never see this. This is simply the backstory. We're going to see them when they're grown-ups. And then I sat there and I suddenly thought, oh, why not? Why don't we make a film where we see them and then we flash back to 10 years earlier? So that was the genesis of the idea during the course of actually doing it.
Oh, hello. Hello. Are you, Hannah?
It's Hannah, actually.
All right.
So it becomes a film about the enormous gap between when you're 20 and when you're 30, when you're, coming out of your teens and when you've settled into the grown-up world and you've got a job and all the rest of it.
Oh, fax machine.
Yeah, I need it for work, really.
Oh, you've got everything.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
The backstory of 10 years ago was shot on 16mm with a handheld camera, and the present was shot on 35mm on legs and not handheld. I mean, it's not so much the acting style is different, it isn't. It's the way the girls are behaving is different.
Hey, look! Wuthering Heights! Why didn't you ask Ms. Bronte to inform you what the rest of your entire life will consist of?
I don't want to.
Go on.
No.
I insist. No! No, you don't want to. Well, that's interesting, because neither do I.
Hannah is more over the top and kind of ridiculous because she's a girl that's sending herself up all the time and doing funny voices and things. And the other girl has got a terrible skin problem, and it makes her sort of, but her skin has cleared up 10 years later, or she's found a way of dealing with it, It is also a film about coincidences, and it's unashamedly, there are outrageous coincidences in it because sometimes that happens in life, and that's one of the tropes of the film.
Listen, why don't we go downstairs, right? I'll show you how to pull. We come back up, okay, and we drink this, yeah?
No, thank you.
You got a problem or something? You fucking weird. What the fucking eyes am out with you?
Bye!
You got a problem? You got a fucking problem! Slags!
Topsy-Turvy. I grew up in Manchester, going to shows, going to the movies a lot, going to the circus, the pantomime, variety, what we call the old vaudeville. I saw Laurel and Hardy on stage. And every year we would go and see the D'Oyly Carte Opera Company, who specialised in the works of Gilbert and Sullivan. And so I became, and remain, an unashamed fan of Gilbert and Sullivan's operas. And I'd hatched for quite a long time the notion that it would be a good idea to deviate from my 20th century domestic narratives and actually explore the theatrical world of Gilbert and Sullivan.
If you give me your attention, I will tell you what I am. I'm a genuine philanthropist, all other kinds are sham. It's little fault of temper and its social defect. In my erring fellow creatures I endeavour to correct.
But it's also an exploration, of course, of the creative process of, it's doing something that I never thought I would do, but unashamedly did, by saying, let's turn the camera around on those of us in show business, how seriously we take the profoundly difficult job of entertaining and amusing other people.
I am unable to set the piece that Gilbert persists in presenting.
The piece I persist in presenting, Sullivan, is substantially altered each time. Otherwise, there'd be little point in my presenting it to you.
With great respect, old chap, it is not substantially altered at all.
It was like a mini university. People not only were actors, all these actors, a big cast. They were researching not only the theatre and the specific music and the drama and all that, but everything else, politics and religion and, so that they became really three-dimensional 19th century people. We even had etiquette workshops, because the etiquette amongst middle-class people at that time was very, very strict about, ways to behave and all that.
I meet a gentleman. He invites me to supper. I mention my little secret. And then he's off, quick, smart. C'est impossible.
Well, you shouldn't reveal your little secret until he's fallen hopelessly in love with you and has asked you to marry him.
Oh, Jessie, for goodness sake. By the by, I'm sure you do realise, do you not, that I have a little boy?
I thought it would be more interesting just to focus down on one specific period, which is the genesis of the original production of The Mikado, influenced by the arrival of a Japanese village with real Japanese people that this Dutchman brought over from Japan. So a Japanese village was set up in a building near where the Royal Albert Hall now is in 1884, which was a complete Japanese village with all sorts of things going on. And you can read about this village all over the place in all the books on the subject of this particular history. But nowhere does it say that there was a theatre in the exhibition. But when we did the research and we found the ground plans of the actual village itself, there in one corner was a theatre. And I thought, this is really interesting. If there was a theatre, there was no way Gilbert didn't see some performance. So collaborating with the Japanese actors that were in the film, we distilled down a famous kabuki play, and that's what you see. You see a kind of tiny distillation of this kabuki play, and you see Gilbert seeing it. Now, Topsy-Turvy was not only a departure from my normal oeuvre because of its content and subject matter, but also its scale. To persuade people to back a film about the working lives of Gilbert and Sullivan in the 1880s is a tall order. One of the key players in my story was a producer called Simon Channing Williams. But we know, and this is important for anyone that's thinking about making films or getting involved with movies in any shape or form, there are two kinds of producers, which is to say there are producers who really want to make their own films and who want to have input and involvement into artistic decisions and casting choices. But then there are those producers who are enablers, who are there to make everything work so that I can do what we do with creative freedom and comfort and resources. And Simon Channing Williams was the consummate producer. All or nothing. Having made Topsy-Turvy, I thought, OK, let's return our attention to now. And there was really a lot of poverty going on. So I thought, let's look at working class families and the struggles. But for me, apart from anything else, place is as important as people. It's all part of the whole. And eventually I said to the location scout, let's make a number of families that live in the same depressed, tumble-down housing estate. They said that is the worst decision you can make. It's terrible. Choosing on housing estates is a nightmare. You can't move stuff. You have to protect this and that, and you can't move. You know where to put the catering truck and all that. It's an absolute nightmare. And one day they rushed in and they said, you'll never guess, but down the road from here is a complete housing estate with 300 houses, and it's empty because they're going to demolish it and build new residences there. We'll have complete control of it. And what you see in the film is that, well, of course, it meant that we could have it quite empty and just the occasional suggestion of other people. So it has a kind of balefulness, which was absolutely right for the spirit of the film.
I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, see you, Ron.
Many of my films have got endings that are ambiguous or enigmatic, or because I want to hand it over to you. Say, OK, you go away with it now, debate it, ponder it, argue about it, whatever. All or Nothing does actually end on a positive note. The lad has had a heart attack. He has got over it. He's started to eat properly and he's being a bit more positive. And they've resolved their relationship through a crisis. The general vibe is that things are okay now. But if you look at the sister, you can see that she's not entirely convinced. So there is a hanging question mark there, which I think is important.
All right, Rach. Yeah.
Vera Drake. So Vera Drake comes out of the fact that, as I said, I'm old enough to remember what it was like. I was personally never responsible for an unwanted pregnancy, as it so happens, but I was around situations where there were abortionists on the scene. The research that I did at great length and for quite a long time showed that there were all kinds of women who performed this necessary social facility. There are stories, abundant stories, of women who, when they were arrested by the police, people came out and cheered them because they were so popular, because they solved people's problems for them. And there are Vera Drakes, women who, out of the kindness of their hearts, saw it, I should say, as their job to help young women solve their problem.
Now, what's going to happen is tomorrow, the day after, you get a bit of a pain down below. You take yourself to the toilet, you'll start bleeding, then it'll all come away.
What do you mean it'll come away?
It'll all be over, dear. You'd be right as rain.
I invite actors to take part, and I do not tell them what the film is going to, what I have in mind, and often I don't even know what I've got in mind, although in this case I did. However, with Imelda Staunton, whose work I knew but I hadn't worked with previously, it was important that I couldn't not tell her she was going to play an abortionist. Of course, I shared with her, I said, this is what it's going to be. She said, that's fine. But the family had no idea.
Here's to Apple and Reg. Welcome to the family, Reg. And all the very best to the both of you. Cheers.
Cheers. Happy couple.
And for quite a long time, for 2 or 3 months or something, we did lots and lots of endless improvisations about this family, and nobody in the family knew that she was an abortionist because the woman wouldn't have told them and didn't tell them. So they didn't know that she had done all these different improvisations with actresses playing women who wanted to terminate their pregnancies. She didn't know that the last one she'd done had gone wrong. She didn't know that there were actors playing doctors and nurses and things, and none of them knew that there was a whole bunch of actors playing the police. And then we'd done research with a retired police superintendent from the Metropolitan Police who remembers what it was like when there were illegal abortions and all the rest of it. But that, of course, involves a very rigorous discipline on the part of everybody involved, including the crew, to keep their mouths shut about things in front of the actors. And here's the interesting thing. People say, well, surely some actors would spill the beans. It's never happened. Not once. Never. Because people get it, they embrace it, they enjoy it, they find it stimulating, and it is what happens. So there you go. So finally there was an 11-hour improvisation. And 11 hours means 11 hours with the actors in character, not coming out of character, in costume, for real, for 11 hours. And I, of course, watch this quietly but never interrupt. You don't hear a peep out of me. My job is to shut up and listen. And this was a celebration party, as you see in the film. And all of a sudden, knock at the door, the police show up. It was traumatic for everybody because the actors playing the family had no idea why the police would show up. For Imelda Staunton in character, she knew exactly why they were there.
Sorry to interrupt your celebrations, but we need to talk to Mrs. Vera Drake.
They've all came out of character under instruction and now come out of character. It took them a couple of hours. They sat around and they drank tea and coffee and just sort of came down from the experience. And then we spent several days debriefing it and analysing it. 2 months later, 2.5 months later, in the location of that apartment, we then were able to draw on that experience and construct the scene that you see in the film, which hopefully is as powerfully, emotionally traumatic as that experience.
What's all this about? We will keep you posted. I'm her husband. I've got a right to know. I appreciate that, sir. You'll just do as I've asked. Close the door. Thank you.
One of the number one rules about this when I'm working with the actors is don't think about making it interesting. Don't try and make things happen. I'm not asking you to be a writer or a dramatist or a filmmaker or a storyteller. You're there to monitor what the character is experiencing, and only that. My job is to deal with that, to negotiate with it, to challenge it, to change it, to accept it, to exploit it, whatever it is. Happy-go-lucky. I'd worked with Sally Hawkins a few times. She's then Vera Drake, playing the posh girl who is able to get an abortion privately because she's got the resources and means to do so. And also she was, of course, in All or Nothing. And so we'd worked together and I knew her, and I just thought it would be great to make a film where we tap into her energy. She's got a kind of positive energy. And then there was Eddie Marsan, who plays Scott, the fascist driving instructor. As always, all the actors work separately just on what their characters. So Eddie Marsan doing this character he knew that all these other actors were doing different things. He didn't know what they were doing. He knew that he was isolated. And so therefore he was quite convinced that it was going to be a film about a driving instructor with all these different people learning to drive. And eventually he reports with some amusement that eventually it dawned on him that that was not the case at all, that in fact it was about this girl, this woman, and he was just part of that.
And they told you the price, £22.50 an hour.
Yeah, that's right. Cheap as chips, you know.
We may be cheap, but we're better.
I are?
You want to go with the big companies, they use inexperienced instructors.
They don't.
They just passed their test and they charge more.
Bastards.
Us experienced instructors, we go with the small companies and we charge less.
That makes a lot of sense, that does.
There were people that said, I couldn't stand that woman, I couldn't stand it. And it's as I've already said, it was ridiculous. You soon see that she's a really good teacher. She's got a great sense of humour, yes. She's got a great sense of fun and of the ridiculous, but she can teach. When there's a kid that's got behavioural problems, she can deal with it. First, she, is quite jolly and can deal with her fascist driving instructor. When it comes to the crunch, she can deal with him, She's grounded, she's intelligent, and she's sophisticated, So people that have that reaction to the film, I think, as I've said, it tells us more about them than it does about the film, actually.
From the elbows, like the eagle spreading his wings. Beautiful, angry, ferocious.
Another year. By the time we get to another year, I'm 60-something or other, I can't remember exactly. So we're having a look at the later part of your life, primarily. You have a couple who are really very solid in their relationship and very grounded and fulfilled.
What's for supper?
Arrabbiata. You hungry?
I'm starving.
You have an old friend of theirs who really is a very sad case. And you've got this person very incidental to their lives, Mary, played by Leslie Manville, who incidentally is the actor that I've worked with more than any other. She's the record holder, and you never see her play the same character twice in any shape or form.
Hello, Mary.
Hi, Jerry. It's not raining, thank goodness.
I know.
This woman who is very sad, this woman who is a victim of having been obviously told all her life that you have to be gorgeous for men. And she's had terrible relationships because of that. And now she is looking into that black hole of actually old age, though she's not there yet, but she's heading that way. And it's very sad. And she's very lonely, and she gets drunk, and then she behaves badly in some ways, and in the end they get fed up with her and so on.
You'll be 64 now.
64? Blimey, he's older than me.
Almost a pensioner.
You'll be past it now, Mary. Give us your hand.
Oh, no, Tom. He was lovely.
Well, we all grow old.
It's about sadness, and it's about frustration, and about disappointment and fulfillment and generosity. As always, I reached that point when I shared with Dick Pope what it was that we were having in mind. I want to just digress for a moment, because as we speak here at this moment, it's about 7 weeks since Dick Pope died. He was a great cinematographer, a great colleague, a great friend, and a great guy. And he shot everything that we've been talking about since Life is Sweet in 1990. When it came to another year, I was a little bit more vague than I sometimes. It's this and it's that. No. And he said, OK, I'll shoot some tests. And we went into a preview theatre at 8 o'clock in the morning in Soho in London. And he said, look, I've shot 4 different looks. See what you think. Choose which way you want to go. And I sat there and I suddenly thought, oh, I know what this is. We'll do spring, summer, autumn and winter. In fact, what he then developed was a different look for each of the 4 seasons, and he does that brilliantly. And of course that meant I then went back into my work with the actors, and that informed my sense of narrative structure, and that was very helpful. And so that's just an illustration of the relationship between the cinematics and the dramatics. Mr. Turner. When I was at art school, I started to look at Turner and start to really, really understand. We weren't just looking at landscapes, we were looking at something very profound and special and radical. Having made Topsy-Turvy, which was just the first proper period film, I thought, well, there hasn't ever been a feature film about Turner, weirdly. There have been little television dramatisations, but never a real Turner-esque, landscape-informed motion picture. The thing about the potential of a film about Turner, not just that he was a great painter, it's the tension between this curmudgeonly, eccentric, dogged guy, which he was by all accounts, and the epic, visionary poetry of his extraordinary work. If that's not the recipe for a cinematic investigation, not least one by me, I don't know what is, basically.
So you are an artist, Mrs. Somerville?
Oh, I don't think we can quite use that term in the presence of Mr. Turner.
Nevertheless, Daddy, Mrs. Somerville is a fine watercolourist.
Oh, you flatter me. Oh, what an epic storm scene.
Rock crushing house in Switzerland. Yeah, can't I say, women digging for bait? I don't care for that much.
As to the artists sharing with each other, and that's what they did. And they were all actors that could paint. Just as all the actors that sing in Topsy-Turvy can really sing and can sing that kind of material, and all the people playing musical instruments are actors who can play musical instruments. So that was very strict.
Morning, Mr. Turner.
Martin's Billy Gussie.
Good day. Delighted you could join us.
Damn fine spectacle this year, Billy.
It's important, looking at Turner, to look at his relationships. He did father children who he was then didn't want to know about. He had this housekeeper for years and years and years, and we actually invented them having a sexual relationship, though it seemed to us pretty inevitable. Again, the tension between, in some ways, the mess of his domestic life and everything, and again, the spiritual nature of his work, that seemed to me very important to explore. Peterloo, for some people from the northwest of England who have any sort of political background, they grew up knowing all about the Peterloo massacre. It was a major, major thing that happened. A lot of us, and that included, and all the actors and everybody that were in the film were from that part of the world. I was very rigorous in the way we cast it. Weirdly, lots of us really didn't know much about the Peterloo massacre and where it happened. I mean, I grew up in the city that's adjacent to Manchester called Salford. And you could get to where it happened on the bus from our house in 15 minutes. I mean, it was there, But we didn't really know much about it. Only 2% of the population had the vote, and it was about demonstrating for people to have the vote.
No, sir, they do not have that right.
No!
But we have a right.
Aye!
We have a right to present a petition to this big, fat prince, and that we propose to do.
This petition will demand, at last, a fair, proper and full representation for all Englishmen.
I mean, the reactions to the film have been more varied than to any other film I've made. Some people said, well, God, it was boring, it was all talking. Well, there's a lot of talking. I mean, you can't describe the final passage of the film, which is a massacre sequence on a massive scale. You can't describe that as all talking, but there is a lot of talking. It's about oratory, it's about argument. You hear from different political factions having political meetings, and I did that unashamedly because that is what it's about. And, on the basis that an audience could take it or leave it, really. I mean, that's in the nature of what we were dealing with.
I will not have my reputation and name and the virtues which I espouse besmirched for the behaviour of a single group of men.
This is Lancashire, sir, and authorities here have no regard for their reputation or anybody else's. And meetings of this nature hereabouts invariably end in violence.
That is because they have not been addressed by me.
Hard truths. I hadn't worked with Marianne Jean-Baptiste for all those years, since Secrets and Lies. What I've been doing over the many, many years in films and plays is to look at different corners of society. So I thought, OK, now is the time to look at black family. I've had black characters in my films on and off quite a lot, but I thought now's the time to focus on that. But as to what the film actually is, which is a study of the kind of emotional problems that it is, and behavioural problems and relationships, that really wasn't quite there yet. That really evolved once we started exploring. I went on the journey of making the film. Susie Davis designed it again. Susie Davis, who is a brilliant designer. I mean, she designed Barbie, for example, just to illustrate her versatility.
Mum, I'll see you in a bit.
Where do you think you're going?
Out.
Where out?
For a walk.
How many times do I have to tell you? People are going to accuse you of loitering with intent.
It's a collaboration between the production designer, the costume designer, and indeed the makeup designer, and the actors and me. At first, of course, she started to put together, knowing that this was a family of a Jamaican background, various kinds of interesting, colourful Jamaican artefacts of various kinds that, as she assumed, such people would have around the house, as indeed the sister does. And Marianne said, no, not Pansy. Pansy wants nothing there. It's sterile. There's nothing on the walls. It's bland. And we found the house that would lend itself to that. I mean, it's a brilliant piece of sterile anti-design, In opposition to that, in the contrast, you have the sister's happy environment that she shares with her ebullient daughters, and she's got a balcony full of plants that she tends and all the rest of it.
And her over there with that fat baby. Cold, 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 and she's walking up and down the street with nothing but a big pink bow on its bald head so everybody can tell it's a girl, like I care. Parading it around in the little outfit, not dressed for the weather, nah, with pockets. What's the baby got pockets for? What's it gonna keep in its pocket? A knife? It's ridiculous.
Life is comic and tragic, all rolled into one. People have said about hard truths, oh, well, obviously, they say to me, you've decided to make it funny and then in the second half it stops being funny. No, I haven't done that at all. We've got what needs to happen happening, and what's happening evokes mirth on a grand scale in the earlier part of the film, and there is a natural, organic, unaffected moment when the laughter simply stops, because it stops being funny, basically. Not completely forever, but mostly. Because that's in the nature of what's happening. There's sadness in what's happening from the word go, and, people are crazy and grotesque, yourself and myself included. I'm there to make you care, to move you, to make you laugh, to make you cry, and to, in that sense, hopefully, without being pompous about it, to improve your lives. That's what it's all about. That's what we're in the business of doing. And to entertain. I mean, make no mistake about it. I mean, we are in show business. We are entertainers. Before too long, I will no doubt exit this mortal planet, and I'll feel okay about it, really, But you've invited me to be pompous, and that's what I've been for the last couple of minutes.